kids up on the street. Muddy boots and no complaining. Gotta keep shoes on their feet. You might be born to be a sinner, might be born to be a saint, might be born to save each other, one born with money in the bank.
The Mighty 790 KFGO, good afternoon, and welcome back to The Drive. KFGO time coming up on 4:10. I'm Dan Michaels. Paulie Lines is our producer. Paul Juergens, the KFGO News Center. More news in the KFGO News Center at the bottom of the hour. We're really pleased to be joined by this lady today. Her name is Jessie Veeder. I know you know who she is. She writes for The Forum, and I imagine that's printed in other papers as well. We'll find out in a moment. Jessie Veeder has been a symbol of folk music in the Badlands of western North Dakota since she released her first album, The Road, when she was 16 years old. She has been performing at fairs and festivals around the state and managing a national college and coffeehouse tour and recording more music and et cetera. She's had a heck of a last couple of months, though, and I was privileged to be part of a recent speech presentation she gave where she was talking about resiliency, something she has shown a lot these last couple of months. Let's go out somewhere near Watford City, North Dakota, and try to find Jessie Veeder, who had to climb to a hill near her home so she would have a good line to us today. Hi, Jessie. How are you doing?
Oh, hello. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. You are so right, though. I am on a hill in the middle of nowhere talking to you. Pretty rural out here.
So, Jessie, you live on a farm that is over 100 years old. Where you're at, I mean, you are right in the middle of North Dakota.
Right on the edge of the Badlands. My ancestors settled here about 104 years ago, and I was raised on this place. And I just fell in love with it and graduated high school in 2001 and didn't know if I would ever be able to be back here and raise my family. It was during a time that was harder. I mean, I say that now, but didn't have as many opportunities for work and jobs. And when we were graduating, instead, build your career. But lo and behold, the oil industry sort of opened up opportunities for small businesses, and so did the high-speed internet in rural communities. So we found ourselves, my husband and I, who I grew up with, back here building a life for ourselves and as the fourth-generation ranchers on this place, and it's really a dream come true. So I've been able to write and sing from the middle of nowhere and raise my babies from the middle of nowhere. So I'm loving it.
How many kids do you have, Jess?
I have two little girls, one who is almost 5 and one who's almost 3. So
and what are their names?
So we named my oldest daughter after my grandma Edith, who is my dad's mother, who raised him on this place where we're raising her. And my daughter Rosalie is the youngest.
I got it. Jessie,
yeah.
about
why we moved back here and what happened when we did move back home. I had been touring up and down the Midwest ever since I got to college. I went to school at UND, so I did an album right out of high school and then just continued to write music and tour with an agency out of Nashville while I went to college. And then when we moved back home, I guess for good about 10 years ago, I was wondering what I was going to do with my life here as a career. And basically, my husband, I didn't want to go into banking necessarily. That wasn't really my background. I had a communication and public relations degree. I couldn't teach. So I just was kind of exploring what it was that I was going to do. And my husband just said, well, we can take a breath here. And why don't you just write and sing and follow, spend some time on the ranch like you used to as a kid and just write about it and just be inspired again. So he gave me a kind of permission. I shouldn't say permission because I do what I want. But
no, I know what you mean though. You're in this world together and you gotta agree with what you're going to do. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it sounds kind of weird when I say it that way, but he just supported me in the idea that I could just take a breath for a minute. So I started writing a blog, and about what it was like to be back on my family's ranch as an adult person, how the barn looked a lot smaller to me, the house that my dad was raised in, and we would visit his cousins and have big Christmas dinners there, was so much smaller now that I was living in it with all of my shoes and boots and my dog and my husband. And all of a sudden, it just kind of took off because I was taking pictures. I was inspired. I was engaged with this place that made me want to be a singer in the first place. And then from there, because I had so many followers kind of across the world, I was offered a job as a columnist at the Fargo Forum, writing the same thing, just about rural living, some musings on that. And then, of course, once I had perspective on maybe what it was like trying to start a family in the middle of nowhere, and some infertility issues, some health issues with my family. And I just took the stance of being really honest and open about the good times and the bad times. And I think that resonates with people because that's the human condition. And I just kept writing for them. So the column turned from monthly to weekly the first shot I got at it, and I've got to stick through with the forum communication through the hard times that newspapers are going through now, and I feel really grateful for that platform.
Jessie, are you writing for anybody else, or does it just appear in the forum?
All of the forum owns newspapers, so it used to be across the state, in Bismarck Tribune. It used to be in almost every newspaper in the state, but with the transition and the way they run newspapers now, Grand Forks runs it. I think Jamestown has it. Dickinson has it. And our little hometown newspaper in Watford. So, and you can find it online as well.
And I'm looking at it, too. It's called The Shirt, or This Shirt. Is this week's article. If you haven't read it, you got to go read it. Ladies, especially about your man and his shirts. My wife likes to run around in my shirts, too. It's kind of I don't know. It's kind of but it's a really well-written article. It's very poignant and kind of touching, too. So it's called The Shirt, and it's out there already. All right. So we've set the table. Everybody kind of knows Jessie is a singer-songwriter. She's got several albums out. She writes all sorts of different things, including this article. But, Jessie, you were working on your album this last summer, and you take it from there. Tell us what happened.
Oh, my gosh. So, I just celebrated my 37th birthday and realized I had been performing professionally for over 20 years, and was kind of reflecting on what that meant to me and the people that I've been performing with all of those 20 years. And one of them was my dad, and a man named Mike Andrews, who's been my guitar player since I was a little kid and was in a band with my dad. So I was feeling pretty nostalgic for the music that raised me and the musicians that have raised me, and all the music venues that have raised me as a musician. And also the story that, was being told about why or how a musician can kind of create a life and a living in the middle of nowhere. So anyway, I went to work on my only non-original album, Playing Favorites, I was calling it, and I just grabbed some of my favorite songs that raised me, Guy Clark songs, traditional songs, some church music, some Nancy Griffith music, just these John Prine, these musicians that really shaped me as a songwriter, and then I recorded them with the musicians that I played with since I was a little kid, and one of them was my dad, at a studio in Bismarck. And while I was recording and performing, I started actually about, last winter. I got really, really sick with, I just couldn't catch my air. So I was coughing. It was before COVID was a thing that we knew about. And I was just trying to understand why I couldn't catch my breath, why I developed this weird asthma, why you could hear me take a breath in, and what was going on with me. I just felt terrible. Long story short, I spent months working with my local physician who sent me on to a specialist, but it was really a long time between the February referral and my May visit, where I went to Bismarck, and it was discovered that I had a tumor that was blocking 90% of my right lung, or all of my right lung, and 90% of my left lung. So I was breathing out of what was a fingernail slot in my airway, doing life, raising babies, working almost full time, running all around the state doing performances and I couldn't breathe. Like, no wonder I didn't feel very well. And so it was an emergency situation at that point, and they sent me and referred me on to Mayo Clinic, and I was in surgery to remove that tumor in my airway the next day. And so anyway, so they did in June. Then I went back with my husband and kind of set everything up for me to be out for a major surgery where they got most of the tumor out of my airway, and then they had to remove the tumor that was on the outside of my airway, which was I think 30% of it was still in me. And it was a cancerous tumor. It was a slow-growing cancer. Adenoid cystic carcinoma is what they call it. I've likely had it for several years growing. But they went in and cut my sternum open and moved my lungs around, maybe even detached them. I think they did. Took part of my airway out that was connected to the tumor, reconstructed and my husband's so much better at explaining this anatomy, but basically reconstructed my entire airway and where it connects to my lungs, and put me back together, sewed me back up. And I was at Mayo Clinic for a week in recovery in the hospital, and then came home to recover with my family and really rely on my community to take care of me, because it was a serious surgery and a serious recovery, but was declared basically cancer-free. I say basically. I was declared cancer-free in August. So that was quite the whirlwind for me as a singer and performer, to have your breathing compromised in that way. We were a little bit nervous about my voice coming back and things, but I thought if I could, sacrifice my voice to live to see my babies grow up, that's a sacrifice I would certainly make. But it didn't turn out that way. So we're so grateful.
Wow. Jessie, that's just an absolute amazing story. I have a similar thing there I've went through, not quite as bad as that, but I have the same zipper that Jessie has in her chest, and if I go out with two buttons unbuttoned in my shirt, my wife will come up and button it up and say, "Hey, But what I really love that you're doing, Jessie, is you are letting that scar fly."
Oh, please, yeah. I mean, I have two daughters, and I guess I didn't really think it through so much, but in talking about it and realizing why I'm not nervous about showing it off is, number one, I'm 37 years old. I know who I am and what I look like, and I know what path I've been on. So I don't really anymore have much to hide. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
I think our flaws make us more beautiful and more relatable, and I feel like if we could all kind of shed the armor that we put up, and I work on it every day. I have my own insecurities, but the scar is not going to be one of them. This scar is going to be something that shows the world that I survived something that some people do not get to survive. I'm so aware of that I was the lucky one that could come home to the ranch and hold my kids again. And so I think for cancer survivors or survivors of really terminal illnesses, I can proudly wear this scar, as I know they would have probably worn theirs if they could have lived. So I want to show that to my kids.
I think that's just wonderful. Jessie Veeder is our special guest. We're talking about resiliency this afternoon. Jessie, do you remember the first day that you took a deep, satisfying breath?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's been recent, I have to say. And as everybody that has had a sternum surgery where they've had to cut you open, like you said, like the zipper, it takes a long time before you can stand up straight, before you can stretch your arms out, lift anything, and take that deep breath. And so I was also, after, I was kind of declared cancer-free, was really still struggling with the repercussions of the surgery, which resulted in major, major headaches that I just now sort of got a handle on. So that's something I just want people to be aware of. Like, even if you are declared healthy, sometimes you have recurring ailments that were hanging on because this tumor was such a stress on my body. There's still some things I'm trying to recover from. So that was something that was really debilitating for me. So just recently, in the past couple weeks, I've been able to really take a deep breath and feel the bottom of my lungs. Like I remember saying to people, even after they removed the tumor out of my airway with that bronchectomy, that wasn't a major surgery. I was like, oh, yeah, I really couldn't breathe, could I? And then after, several months of recovery after this last surgery and getting my headaches under control, I really realized when I started feeling better how sick I was and that I was pushing through just how I was pushing through it and pushing it to the side. And so I guess I want people to know that I wasn't listening to my body. I knew there was something wrong, but I was just pushing forward to do the next thing. And it almost cost me my life, honestly, because I was thinking, well, it can't be anything major. It honestly didn't cross my mind that it would be a tumor. I thought I was going to come home with some higher dosage of, an inhaler when I saw that specialist. But anyone who's not been fixed when you have an ailment and they don't know what it is, that's probably a worse news than knowing what it is. So I just feel so blessed that they figured it out. But that's the long answer.
Gotcha.
To your question.
We've been on the similar paths, Jessie. That sounds familiar. Jessie, where do we find your music?
JessieVeedermusic.com is where you can order my newest album, which was released on my birthday, August 25th, and basically a week or two after I found out I was cancer-free. So I was working on releasing it during kind of one of the more difficult times in my life, but I found that my projects happen that way. I do an album when I'm pregnant, and I tour when I have a little baby, and all these major milestones. So.
Jessie Veeder joins us, VeederRanch.com, JessieVeederMusic.com. If you do a googly search for Jessie Veeder, you'll find her, and don't miss her article. If you haven't read this shirt yet for this week, go find it. It's a great article. Jessie Veeder, what a privilege to have you on the air today. I wish you all the best, and we'll talk again, okay?
Thank you so much for having me, and stay healthy, my friend. Stay healthy.
You too, and careful on the way down that hill.
Yeah, thank you.
See you later. Jessie Veeder this afternoon. KFGO time is 4:27. You're listening to The Drive on the Mighty 790 KFGO.
Coming up Tuesday on the KFGO Morning Crew, licensed registered dietitian Elizabeth Meyer got questions about the health, food, and diet. She'll answer them.
And me, I'm hosting a trip to Ballard's Lake of the Woods. I'll be there. I'll be talking to you guys. Dan Michaels will be filling in.